In introducing Phil, I want to make it real brief. Everybody here knows him. Most everybody knows him. He's got a long list of awards and publications, and it just goes on. And this list I have is 5 years old. Anyway, he's won just about every award that a poet can win, I think. And taught in many places. One thing that he's an outstanding teacher, as most of you, good many of you know. His poems, poems contain within them the power of the spirit in world affairs. They're poems of desire, poems that have, that understand, poems that think, poems that flash with inspiration deep within us. And I think it's the ideal guy to be reading tonight for the nuclear freeze. There's a vision in his poems that addresses the issue of nuclear war. And without further ado, let me introduce to you Philip Levine.
I don't know why I don't know anything about Russia. That my mother was born there. And my father.
To the mic.
What?
Yeah, closer to the mic.
Closer to the mic.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I was talking about my mother. I was a little nervous. She might hear me. I was saying I don't know anything about Russia, although my mother was born there, my father was born there, my grandfather was born there, my grandmother was born there, my Aunt Sippy was born there. And we used to sit around the table eating the terrible food that my mother and my grandmother cooked. We're talking about the wonderful days under the Tsar. But actually, my grandmother had a brother who also came to Detroit from Russia. And he found Detroit so deplorable, he tried to go back to the Tsar's Russia. So, no matter how bad your life seems, it's worse for someone else. Chuck Moulton introduced me. And he didn't say nearly enough, I thought. I wish he'd been more specific about some of the awards. I mean, it costs you so much to get, compromise your life in so many ways. I mean, I actually had to grow straight hair to get a job in the East. At any rate, I'm going to read a poem which is involved with Moulton in a curious way. There's a little center of this poem, which I got from Moulton. I didn't get it from one of his poems. You know, Moulton writes poems, and they're quite alarming. I mean, they're kind of terrific, and they're also alarming. And as many of you may know, he's a very gifted raconteur. And under another name, he once worked professionally as an operator for Bell Telephone. At any rate, once he was telling me about a man he'd met in Alaska. So this incredible guy. And he made a statement about this guy. It was so amazing. He didn't know he was making it. And it fell into my imagination. And some years later, this rather lovely poem, mysterious, intriguing poem, grew out of the little seed of Moulton's vitality. W.B. Yeats has a poem about a woman who's dead, and the guy's yearning for her company again. He used to drink with her, talk with her. And he says about her, she put a skin on everything she said. She made it alive. The poem's called Let Me Be. It's from I'm reading from the English version of my selected poem. So, it's true, it's a very ugly book. The American version is very beautiful and quite expensive, but this costs less than £9. Let's work. There may be changes in the grammar that I couldn't find in the American. And if I suddenly stall, it's because I don't understand what the English editor has done with the poem. This poem appeared in a book called 7 Years from Somewhere, which was my least appreciated book. And so everything I read will be something that has been condemned by a critic or two. Let me be. When I was first born, the world was another place. Men were somehow taller and sang a great deal. I sang as soon as I could. I sang to the roads I drove over. I sang to the winds, and I loved them. It seems I loved so much that at times I shook like a leaf the moment before it surrenders the branch and takes the air. Little wonder I aged so fast. And before I was 40, I was wizened and tiny, shrunken, like my grandpa, and like him, afraid of nothing. I think I would have died early had I not been reborn, American, blue-eyed, tall. This time, my hair grow long and never gray. Except for the smoking, people said I was like Jesus. Except for that and not knowing the answers to anything. This time, too, I drove badly because my head was always filled with tunes and words. And when the songs went wild, so did I. 4 times I was arrested for drunk driving. And the police could not understand a man so full of joy and empty of drugs and alcohol. They would make me walk a line, but instead I danced and sang like a lunatic. Yes, even alone at night, blinded by their headlights and pushed by rough, unseen hands, I knew that life was somehow all I would be given, and it was more than enough. The months in jail were nothing. My children came on weekends, and they seemed proud of me, though each week I grew more tiny and tired. They thought I was happy. In the soft work shirt and pale jeans, I was once more the father of their infancy. My wife's tears fell burning my hands, for to her there was something magical about me, something that could not survive the harsh voices, the bars, the armed men. I died in her eyes. I could feel the pain of that death like a fever coming over me, rising along my back, up through my neck, and descending into my eyes like blindness. This time I died altogether, without a word, and all the separate atoms that held my name scattered into the mouths of bus conductors and television repairmen. I could have lived one more time as so many dollars and cents. But given the choice, I asked to remain nothing. So now I am a remembered ray of darkness that catches at the corners of your sight. A flat calm in the oceans that never rests. A yearning that rises in your throat when you least expect it, and screams in a voice no one understands. Let me be. Let me be. Actually, what Chuck had said is, I met this guy in Alaska. He said to me, he was a lot like Jesus, except he smoked camels. You know, the lights that shine upon my palms are blue. Oh, that's right. So, is there any way to correct that? No. Someone have a cigarette lighter? All right. If you can't correct it, well, you can't correct it. Get a flag? Sorry. Ah. Yeah, it's eerie. I don't have good eyes. That's all right. We'll do our best. I may make up some of the poems. No one will notice. I would like to read a short poem about being reborn. I mean, after Mr. Marcus' long description of my eventual frying, I considered, you know, I'd like to be reborn. After all, got a lot coming in Social Security. As I get older, which is something we have in common, by the way. You may find me quite bizarre, but in that way we have a lot in common. I find I consider starting over again more and more. I've heard young people or older people say, people not as old as I, but people in their 30s and 40s say, oh, if only I could be 18 again with what I know now. Actually, I'd like to be like 50 and know nothing that I know now. My notion of a great university, for example, which is not Fresno State, where I'm tenured, well, no one where they are tenured, would be a place where nothing was put into your head, but a great deal was taken out. You know? Like all of the shitty cartoons you saw on Saturday morning, you know, perhaps 1,000 Saturday mornings, 5,000, you and your brothers and sisters sat there killing doves, running cars over squirrels, watching idiocy. Then all the terrible lectures that you heard, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, all the way through school. And then if you're my age, you went through the 60s, and you were harangued by everybody about everything. It would be wonderful. You don't take a course called, open space, you know. There'd be this room, and an idea would enter, like, I'm hungry. You would entertain that idea. You know, you'd open the front door and say, come in, talk to you. Anyway, this is a poem about being reborn. A Jeroboam is an enormous bottle. I don't know exactly how big. It usually holds champagne or brandy or wine. It holds enough for you and me and several others. Let me begin again. Let me begin again as a speck of dust caught in the night winds sweeping out to sea. Let me begin this time knowing the world is salt water and dark clouds. The world is grinding and sighing all night, and dawn comes slowly and changes nothing. Let me go back to land after a lifetime of going nowhere. This time lodged in the feathers of some scavenging gull, white above the black ship that docks and broods upon the oily waters of your harbor. This leaking freighter has brought a hold full of hay forks from Spain, great Jeroboams of dark Algerian wine, and quill pens that can't write English. The sailors have stumbled off toward the bars of the bright houses. The captain closes his log and falls asleep. 1:10:28. Tonight, I shall enter my life after being at sea for ages, quietly, in a hospital named for an automobile. The one child of millions of children who was flown alone by the stars above the black wastes of moonless waters that stretched forever, who has turned golden in the full sun of a new day. A tiny, wise child, who this time will love his life, because it is like no other. I will now read the most depressing poem written in the 20th century. It's in 47 parts, but each is only 100 lines long. It's called A Weekend with Mother. Or Armageddon. No, I've been asked to read a couple of poems. Before I forget, I will read them. This poem's called Heaven. It came from my book, Not This Pig, which was my first truly successful book. Sold literally dozens of copies, and was on a magazine stand where I placed it, in a bookstore in Berkeley. Heaven. It's all true, like all the other poems, but it's not autobiographical. None of the poems are autobiographical. They're about someone else that I'm in constant touch with. He works for the IRS. Heaven. Is that the white light? Oh, thank you. He's brought a white light. You don't know what it's like to read first English spelling. Thank you. Thank you. Now I feel more as though I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a little desperate for life. You're fired. You don't get overtime. Oh, I've always wanted to be on. Heaven. Thank you very much. If you were 27 and had done time for beating your ex-wife and had no dreams you remembered in the morning, you might lie on your bed and listen to a mad canary sing and think it all right to be there every Saturday, ignoring your neighbors, streets, signs that said join, and the need to be helped. You might build, as he did, a network of golden ladders so that the bird could roam on all levels of the room. You might paint the ceiling blue, the floor green, and shade the place you called the sun, so that things came softly to order when the light came on. He and the bird lived in the fine weather of heaven. They never aged. They never tired or wanted all through that war. But when it was over, and the nation had been saved, he knew they'd be hunted. He knew, as you would too, that he'd be laid off for not being braver. And it would do no good to show how he had taken clothespins and cardboard and made each step safe. It would do no good to have been one of the few that climbed higher and higher, even in time of war. For now, there would be the poor asking for their share, and hurt men in uniforms, and no one to believe that heaven was really here. The other. This is a poem I left out of my selected poems. I don't know why. Mike McGuire asked me if I would read it. I had never read it before. There are a lot of my poems I don't read. I don't know why I don't read. There are a great many poets in the room. And they know, as I know, that when you write a poem, you think it's fantastic. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. I mean, that emotion is not totally reliable. It's very much like infatuation or love. I mean, you're madly in love with a woman. Sometimes, or a man, whatever you fall for, a dog. And the next day, he just looks like a little cocker. She just looks like a little cocker. I'd say cocker. Yiddish. Kisser. How could I have fallen in love with that scraggly furred little cocker? So, but when when the thing is on you and you're inspired, you write it. I've had some of the most beautiful days that followed writing some of those wretched poems. I mean, I've walked out of my house saying, very few of us are living the way I'm living now. How many people in the whole world have made themselves immortal before 1 o'clock in the afternoon? And then, I go and do whatever it is I do with a kind of wonderful arrogance. You don't appreciate me enough. I say, give me a better love. Give me a better, that love is too small. It's all right for a minor poet. Then I come home, and as I have a beer or something, and I exult in my poem, and I read it, it's a piece of shit. It's all stolen from me. I've already written it 6 times. But that exquisite day is also mine. That day in which I walked out feeling that I was somehow supremely inspired, touched by some force larger than myself, which I haven't been. Actually, that force is me. The one that wrote that ghastly poem. And the ones that wrote the pretty good poem. I don't know why I didn't include it in the selected. It's called One. I don't think there's anything to explain it. If I had ever lived in Detroit, this poem would be autobiographical. But that's where it takes place. One. When I was only a child, I carried a little wooden sword in my belt. And with it, I could face the dark. I could descend the shaky steps to the basin, and there enter each shadowed corner, and even stare at the 1,000 tearful eyes of the cold. Later, still a boy, I heard my brother crying in his bed next to mine, not for fear of the dark, or because the dead would not return, or for the dull ache of his growing. In December of '51, on the night shift, a plain woman from West Virginia began suddenly to curse this life. She untied the rag that hid her graying hair and wiped her face, and still the words came, "It's shit. That's just what it is. Shit." No one answered, or took her in his arms, or held her hand. And before long, she bowed her head to the wheel that polished the new chromed tube. And all our hours passed a moment at a time and disappeared somewhere in the vast, uncharted spaces between the moons of our blood. Now, if I stood before myself, naked in my body, flecked with graying hairs, I would cry out that I too am still only a boy. And the great vein that climbs down my shoulder and into my right hand stumbles under the will of heaven. I am burning in this new summer. I am one with the scattered roses, one with the moon waning long before dawn, one with my brother who has come down from the sky, and that long-lost woman who told the truth and received at daybreak one toothless kiss on her forehead from our father and mother, the rain.
Sweet Will.
Indeed. Yes, well, I've been asked to read Sweet Will, which is one of Milton's earlier sonnets. There was a moment in his life when he was terrified he would regain his sight and have to look upon his family. But fortunately, it was a false alarm. Now, actually, Sweet Will is the name of a book. I wrote it. It's extraordinarily handsome. I mean, as a book, as an object, as a thing. That's a Walker Evans, the great photographer. A photograph of Joe's Auto Graveyard, Easton, PA. That's on the cover. If you like that photograph, I can get you a copy. Quite inexpensive. Stash. There's the name Stash in this poem. Stash is an all-purpose name for a male of Polish descent. It can be used winningly. Hi, Stash lover. How are you? Or it can be used in a shitty way. You're nothing but a Stash. We're all familiar with names like that. Exactly the way that Diego gets corrupted into Diego. The Cadillac cars enter the poem largely because I wanted them to, but also because Detroit Transmission, where the poem takes place, is where transmissions are made for Cadillacs. Sweet Will. The man who stood beside me 34 years ago this night fell onto the concrete oily floor of Detroit Transmission, and we stepped carefully over him until he wakened and went back to his press. It was Friday night, and the others told me that every Friday he drank more than he could hold and fell, and he wasn't any dumber for it. So just let him get up at his own sweet will, or he'll hit you. At his own sweet will was just what the old black man said to me, and he smiled the smile of one who is still surprised that dawn, graying the cracked and broken windows, could start us all to singing in the cold. Stash rose and wiped the back of his head with a crumpled handkerchief and looked at his own blood as though it were dirt, and puzzled as to how it got there. And then wiped the ends of his fingers carefully, one at a time, the way the mother wipes the fingers of a sleeping child, and climbed back on his wooden soda pop case to his punch press, and hollered at all of us over the oceanic roar of work, addressing us by our names and nations: nigger, kike, hunky, river rat. But he gave it a tune, an old tune, like America the Beautiful. And he danced a little two-step and smiled, showing the 4 stained teeth left in the front, and took another suck of cherry brandy. In truth, it was no longer Friday, for night had turned to day, as it often does for those who are patient. So it was Saturday, in the year of 48, in the very heart of the city of Man, where your Cadillac cars get manufactured. In truth, all those people are dead. They have gone up to heaven, singing "Time on My Hands" or "Begin the Begin," and the Cadillacs have all gone back to earth, and nothing that we made that night is worth more than me. And in truth, I'm not worth a thing. But with my feet, and my 2 bad eyes, and my 1 long nose, and my breath of old lies, and my sad tales of men who let the earth break them back, each one to dirty blood or bloody dirt. Not worth a thing. Just like it was said at my magic birth, when the stars collided, and fire fell from great space into great space, and people rose one by one from cold beds to tend a world that runs on and on at its own sweet will. Somebody said, would you read some new poem or a new poem? A poem that I haven't bored you with already. And I said I would. So let me read a relatively new poem. About a year old. No, not even a year old. About 9 months old. 9 months old. This poem could have had a baby. Any hair. Let's see, is there a little poem behind it? No. It's called A Walk with Tom Jefferson. And I need to say a few words about it. It's fairly long. So if you need to take a piss, hold. My Tom Jefferson, the guy in my poem, is not the former President of the United States. The intelligent President of the United States. That gets it down to 3, right? The very worldly slave owner President of the United States. Now we're back to all of it. Okay? The locale is Detroit, near the ballpark, now called Tiger Stadium. My Tom Jefferson lives there. He's retired. He's a black man, somewhat older than I. Not 70. I suppose most of you know, except for the young folk, that back in 1967 there was a kind of insurrection in Detroit. And much of this, what we now call the inner city, was burned. But people still live there. Many of the houses are gone, but things have replaced them, like open field. And people still live there and try as best they can to make a life in so strange and dreadful a place, which is not so strange. Because it has been humanized, not so dreadful. A Walk with Tom Jefferson. Between the freeway and the gray conning towers of the ballpark, miles of mostly vacant lots. Once a neighborhood of small 2-story wooden houses, dwellings for immigrants from Ireland, Germany, Poland, West Virginia, Mexico, Dodge, Maine. A little world with only 3 seasons, or so he said. One to get tired, one to get old, one to die. No one puts in iris, and yet before March passes, The hard green blades push their way through where firm lawns once were. The trunks of beech and locust darken, the light new branches take the air. You can smell the sticky sap rising in the maples. Smell it even over the wet stink of burned houses. On this block, 7 houses are still here to be counted. And if you count the shacks, housing illegal chickens, the pens for dogs, the tiny pigsty that is half caved. And if you count them, you can count the crow's nest in the high beech tree at the corner. And you can regard the beech tree itself, bronzing in mid-morning light, as the mast of the great ship sailing us all back into the 16th century, or into the present age's final discovery. It's better perhaps not to speak of final anything, for this place was finally retired, the books thrown away, when after the town exploded in '67, these houses were plundered for whatever they had. Some burned to the ground, some hung open, doorless, wide-eyed, till hauled off by the otherwise unemployable citizens of the county to make room for the triumphant return of Mad Anthony Wayne, Père Marquette Cadillac, the Badger, the Wolverine, the Meadowlark, the benign long-toothed biped with nothing on his mind. During baseball season, the neighborhood's a thriving business for anyone who can make change, and a cardboard sign that reads parking, $3. He can stand on the curb directing traffic and pretend the land is his. On mid-August nights, I come out here after 10 and watch the light rise from the great gray bowl of the stadium. Watch it catch a scrap of candy wrapper in the wind, a soiled napkin or a peanut shell, and turn it into fire, or the sound of fire, as the whole world holds its breath. In the last inning, 50,000 pulling at the night air for one last scream. They can drain the stars of light. No one owns any of this. It's condemned, unlike everything else on the planet, guaranteed to last forever, or at least until the year 2000, whichever comes first. The money for the execution ran out 3 years ago, but money here is a dream, part of the lost past. Joe Lewis grew up a few miles east of here and attended Bishop Elementary. No one around here recalls a slender, dumbfounded boy, afraid of his 5th grade homeroom teacher. Tom Jefferson, same name as the other one, remembers Joe at 17, all one sweltering summer, unloading bales of rags effortlessly from the trucks that parked in the alley behind Wolf's sanitary wiping club. Joe was beautiful, is all he said. And we too go dumb, replaying Joe's glide across the ring as he corners Schmeling and prepares to win World War II. Like Joe, Tom was up from Alabama. Like Joe, he didn't talk much then. And even now, he passes a hand across his mouth when speaking of the $5 day that lured his father from the cotton fields and a one-room shack the old folks talked about, until they went home first to visit and later to die. Early afternoon behind his place, Tom's gathering up the remnants of this year's garden, the burned tomato plants and the hardy runners of summer squash that dug into the chalky soil and won't let go. He stuffs the dried remains into a supermarket shopping cart to haul off to an empty block. The zinnias are left, the asters in browns and dirty yellows, tough-petaled autumn blooms, even a few sticky green rosebuds climbing a telephone pole. Alabama is not so far back it's lost in a swirl of memory. I can see trees behind the house. I do believe I still feel winter mornings, all of us getting up from one bed. But for what, I don't know. He tips his baseball cap to the white ladies passing back the way we've come. We all come for $5 a day, and we got this his arms spread wide to include block after block of dumping grounds. Old couches and settees burst open. The white innards gone gray, cracked and mangled chifforoes that long ago gave up their secrets. Yellow wooden ice boxes yawning at the sky, their breaths still fouled with years of eating garlic sausage and refried beans. The shattered rib cages of beds that couldn't hold our ordinary serviceable dreams. Blue mattresses stained in earnest. The cracked toilet seats of genius. Whole market counters that once contained the red meats we couldn't get enough of. Burned out electric motors, air conditioners we suffocated. And overall, an Arctic wind from Canada, which carries off the final, faint, unseeable spasm of the desire to be human. It brings down the maple and elm leaves of early October. If you follow their trail of burnished arrows scuttling across curbs and cracked sidewalks, they'll lead you to the cellar hole of something or someone called Dog Man. Making do, says Tom Jefferson. His neighbors swear someone runs on all fours with his dog pack. They claim they can tell when their own dogs feel the pull of the wild one. The women talk of lost house cats grown to the size of cougars. They've heard them crashing through the dense underbrush of the dumping grounds and later found huge paw tracks in the snow and the remains of drunks and children caught out after dark. Nothing but clean bones revealed under ice when the spring rains came back. Of course, there ain't no kids around here, says Tom. But if there were, the bones be about the same size. Tom has seen vapor rising through the missing floorboards, clouds of it, and maybe, he speculates, animals and man together producing a new variety of steam heat. Even I have seen a brutish black mongrel Dane in late afternoon, his coat snow-flecked, rising on his hind legs to over 7 feet, hanging over fences, peering in windows, as though he yearned to come back to what we are. Winter is in everything we say. It's coming on. We see it in the mad swirl of leaves and scraps of newspapers doing their dances. We feel it as iron in the wind. We could escape, each of us feels, in his shuddering heart. Take the bridge south to Canada, but we don't. Instead, we hunker down, slump a little lower in our trousers and go slow. One night soon, I'll awaken to a late quiet and go out to see all this transformed. Each junked car, each dumping ground and battered hovel, a hill of mounded snow, every scrap of ugliness redeemed under the light of a street lamp or the moon. From the dark tower of the Renaissance Center Ford built, to look down on our degradation, to the great Ford plant downriver, blowing its black breath in the face of creation, the one at Rouge, where he broke first our backs and then our hearts. Everything silent, suspended in a new world, like no other. For a moment, a few stars come out to share this witness. I won't believe it. I'm just going to read 2 more poems. Let the other one be a little too. I'm very depressed. Johnson and Nixon had their influence on my poetry. Their regimes crept into my mentality, my imagination, my heart, and killed portions of all of it. And I doubt they ever recovered. That was my heart never recovered entirely, or yours. And now in this new imperial America, the little that was left me seems to be going at times. Rather recently, I lived on 119th Street in Manhattan, between Amsterdam Avenue and Morningside Drive. So I was 3 blocks from Harlem. I was 15 stories up, and I could look down on the city. And when I went out of my apartment, I turned left and walked to Amsterdam, and I turned left again and walked in the direction of downtown. And I did it again and again and again. And one day I said to myself, no, walk the other way. And I did. And I began taking long walks in Harlem. And I grew up in Detroit during the Depression. And this brought it back. Extraordinary power. It really was like going back to my childhood. It was also like going back to my childhood as it wasn't. Because I remember seeing a huge wall, and it said, U.S. out of Nicaragua, somebody had painted. And then somebody had crossed out Nicaragua and written Harlem. And so there was an awareness that wasn't there in my boyhood. And out of that unhappiness, not the unhappiness of my boyhood, which was mixed and magical, and happy as well as that, but of that miserable winter, called These Streets. It's in 3 short sections. I'll just pause briefly. It's really much more fun, I think, than Detroit and my growing up. These Streets. If I told you that the old woman named Ida Bello was shot to death for no more than $5, that a baby of 18 months saw it all from where she wakened on the same bed, but can't tell because she can't speak, you'd say I was making it up. If I took you by the hand and led you down street after street until we arrived at a door that seemed no different from the rest, and entered to behold the flowered coverlet, not yet washed, on the single iron bed, the calendar stopped on the 2nd Sunday in February, the cluttered 3-burner stove, the sink of cracked dishes, the old wheelchair Ida used to get around, you'd stand in the middle of the bare floor as far from everything as you could get, listening to the cracked window moan and see nothing. The baby's mother, she's only 19, says she'll raise the baby by herself now Ida's gone. And she's not going to cry about it. No, not in front of us two. No. It was Cabin, the neighbor lady says. Ida raised him from a child, raised him up to this, and raised his sisters too. And she counts them off on her fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counts them off. Why did we come here to begin with? There was a pond once, and a path small creatures took into the woods. Brown warblers called down the first light. We woke with it to the long days bursting with sudden anemones, iris growing wild, purple-throated finches as small as canaries tumbling the air. In late summer, tall grasses grew, and we hid side by side from the heavy sun, hid in our own neat bed of broken reeds, a little cup the earth made for us. Our breath came and went. The sky passed overhead, still unstreaked by the geese heading down from Canada, unmarred by anything except the clouds massing toward late afternoon. Yes, it was August once, and the west wind was warm, even at sunset. When I closed my eyes, I slept. When I opened them, I saw a river of stars overflowing their black bowl. 6-floor walk-ups, half the windows boarded up, the doorways bricked over. Still, some families hanging on. Kids flood into the ruined streets morning after morning on their way to school. When it dies down, stray animals pick over the rubbish. A family of 4 cats exits the innards of a blooming sofa. Between 9:30 and afternoon, not a single car starts up or passes down the street. In the corner grocery, 3 lopsided apples on special, 30 cents each. The woman says, "It's a good neighborhood. Ain't no violence here, ain't no trouble." A man comes out of the back room and stares at me until I look away. No one speaks, not even the radio. The light of the world filters down from shelves of Brillo, bright packages of detergent, paper diapers, Roach motels, white, stale, saltless crackers. Moment by yellow moment, the day ticks into the past, and no one tries anything. Let me close with something more cute. This poem is called "One for the Rose." It grew out of my going home for my 50th birthday. There was a party for me. And I got wonderfully drunk. Wonderfully because I had no hangover. Enormously drunk, and I stayed drunk for a couple of days. And with total impunity. And I went through the city and I saw things that were familiar, with lovely changes in them, and grotesque changes. And the past came flooding back deliciously. I was feeling no pain. I was like the child that I really am. When I am a child. One for the rose. 3 weeks ago, I went back to the same street corner where 27 years before I took a bus for Akron, Ohio. But now there was only a blank space with a few concrete building blocks scattered among the beer cans and broken bottles, and a view of the blank backside of an abandoned hotel. I wondered if Akron was still down there, hidden hundreds of miles south among the small, shoddy trees of Ohio. A town so ripe with the smell of defeat that its citizens lied about their age, their height, sex, income, and previous condition of anything. I spent all of a Saturday there, disguised in a cashmere suit, stolen from a man 20 pounds heavier than I, and I never unbuttoned the jacket. I remember someone married someone, but only the bride's father and mother went out on the linoleum dance floor and leaned into each other like whipped school kids. I drank whatever I could find and made my solitary way back to the terminal and dozed among the drunks and widows toward dawn and the first thing north. What was I doing in Akron, Ohio, waiting for a bus that droned slowly between the sickened farms of 1951 and finally entered the smeared air of hell on US 24, where the Rouge plant destroys the horizon? I could have been in Paris, at the foot of Gertrude Stein. I could have been drifting among the reeds of a clear stream like the little Moses, to be found by a princess and named after a conglomerate or a Jewish hero. Instead, I was born in the wrong year and in the wrong place, and I made my way so slowly and badly that I remember every single turn, and each one smells like an overblown rose. yellow American, beautiful and true. Well, I think we'll have a short break while you buy me drinks. I sign a few checks.